They had built Gate 9 to look like mercy. Bright banners hung from the vaulted ceiling, welcome travelers in 8 languages and 4 light spectrum patterns. A fountain of recycled water rose and fell in a perfect loop, glittering under the station lights. The air smelled like citrus solvent and warmed metal. And everywhere you looked there were screens, smiling faces, safety instructions, charity drives, public service messages about unity and interspecies cooperation. It was a cathedral to the idea that civilized beings did civilized things. That's why the body on the floor didn't belong there. I noticed her because everyone else had learned not to. The concourse was packed, dockworkers in exo braces, merchants dragging grav carts, tourists pointing at the fishbowl windows where freighters drifted like slow whales. People flowed around an obstacle the way water flows around stone. Nobody broke stride, nobody raised a voice, no alarms blared. No med drone dropped from a ceiling hatch. She lay half in the shadow of a vending kiosk, half under the shifting glow of a signage hollow advertising Sunsilk nutrient wraps now with 30% more protein analog. Her skin, if you could call it skin, was the color of bruised pearl, not gray, not green, not any of the simple shades the old movies promised. Pearl marbled with faint veins of light that pulsed weakly as if her body was trying to remember how to be a star. She was bleeding, not red. Not blue, something between violet and black, thick and glossy like oil in low gravity. It had pooled under her shoulder and trailed toward a floor drain that would quietly swallow it, erase it, make the problem disappear. Her right arm was bent wrong. People stepped around her like she was a spill, like she was someone else's responsibility, like she was contagious. I stood there for a second, frozen with the same cowardice that kept everyone moving, because I knew the rules. Gate 9 was neutral ground, which meant it belonged to the consortium, which meant every inch was monitored, litigated, and written into policy. Touching an injured alien without clearance could be construed as interference. Liability, assault, contamination, cultural violation, a dozen words with sharp edges. And if she was a protected species, if her people had those rigid protocols about contact, one wrong move could spark a diplomatic incident that ruined my contract, my life, my planet's standing. I knew all of that. And then she made a sound, not a scream, not even a groan, more like a breath that hitched halfway into existence and got stuck, like her body couldn't decide whether it had the strength to ask for help. Her eyes were open. 2 large, dark irises ringed with a pale shimmer that looked like frost on glass. She wasn't staring at the ceiling, she was staring at the passing feet. Watching, waiting, I saw with a strange jolt of shame that she had been watching for a long time. I looked down at my hands, human hands calloused from cargo straps and cheap tools, nothing special. Then I looked around at the people who were pretending not to see, and something in me snapped in a quiet, unglamorous way. Not heroism, not righteousness. Just disgust. Hey, I called, voice sharper than I intended. Medical, the crowd didn't react. A few heads turned and turned away again, like my words were just another announcement. I stepped closer. The station's ambient noise dimmed in my awareness, footsteps, vending machine hum, the soft click of translation implants in people's ears. Her gaze tracked me. Up close, I could see the damage, cuts across her ribs, burned edges like she'd been thrown against a hot surface. A shallow puncture wound near her collarbone that oozed that dark violet fluid. Her breathing was wrong, too shallow. I swallowed and crouched. Can you understand me? Her lips, thin and strangely elegant, moved. Nothing came out. My implant chirped, trying to parse. No signal, no language, of course. Because the universe loved irony, and the first time I decided to be brave, the brave thing came with no instruction manual. I glanced up again, scanning for a med kiosk. There was one 2 gates down. There were also security drones, but they were at their posts like ornaments. Nobody came. Fine. I reached into my satchel and pulled out the only medical thing I had, a station-issued sealant patch, the kind dockworkers used for minor suit leaks. It wasn't meant for biology, but it was sterile, adhesive, and better than letting her bleed into a drain. My fingers hovered over her wound, her eyes widened. And for the first time I saw fear in them, not fear of dying, but fear of being touched. I froze. Okay, I said softly. Okay, I'm not going to hurt you, I'm trying to stop the bleeding. I turned the patch so she could see it, like showing a skittish animal an empty palm. Her gaze flicked to the patch, then to my face, then back to the patch. The shimmer in her veins pulsed once faintly. Slowly, she lifted her uninjured hand an inch, then let it fall. Not resistance, permission. I pressed the patch carefully over the puncture wound, avoiding the edges of torn tissue. The sealant warmed under my fingertips, activating. The bleeding slowed. Her breath hitched again, but this time it made it all the way out. Good, okay, I murmured, one problem at a time. I didn't have a stretcher, I didn't have clearance, I didn't have a clue what her physiology could tolerate, but I had a jacket. I shrugged out of it and rolled it into a crude cushion, sliding it under her head with careful, minimal contact. Her skin was cool, cooler than human. The pulsing veins made it feel like holding something alive in a different rhythm. "Help me," someone said behind me. I turned sharply. A kid, maybe 16, maybe younger, hard to tell, with station malnutrition, hovered at the edge of the scene. Human too, brown skin, wide eyes, cheap work boots. He held a small med spray canister like it was contraband. I saw you stop," he stammered. I can help, my sister's in first aid training." Something in my chest loosened. Like my stupidity had given someone else permission to be stupid too. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, okay, come here." He knelt across from me, hands shaking. What is she?" "Doesn't matter," I said, then realized how bitter that sounded. I softened it. "Not right now." The kid nodded, relieved to have an instruction. He offered the spray. "This is for burns. I don't know if we use it on humans," I said. "We'll use a little, carefully." I lifted the edge of her torn garment near the burned ribs. The fabric was high-grade, woven with microfilaments that didn't look like anything sold in the public bazaar. It clung like it had been grown, not sewn, definitely not a drifter. The kid sprayed a fine mist and the burned edges dulled from angry black to a calmer gray. Her breathing steadied a fraction. Somewhere above us, a drone camera rotated. I felt it like a cold eye. A security voice finally crackled through the concourse speakers. "Unregistered medical intervention detected. Citizens are advised to refrain from—" "Shut up," I said aloud without thinking. The kid stared. Then to my surprise, he barked a laugh, one sharp, nervous burst that sounded like defiance. The voice continued, more insistent. "Refrain from contact pending species identification." "She's dying," I snapped, looking up at the nearest drone. "If you have a med team, send it. If you don't, stop narrating." The drone hovered silent. The crowd had slowed now. People stood at a cautious distance, pretending to be interested in the fountain, pretending to check their messages, pretending my confrontation wasn't happening. But their eyes were on us, on her, on the human who broke the flow. Her eyelids fluttered. Her gaze found mine again, sharp despite the weakness. She moved her lips again, and this time a sound came out, thin, rasping like wind through broken reeds. My implant chirped, caught something, not translation, recognition. A tone, a cipher key. And then my implant, cheap model dockworker issue, did something it had never done before. It displayed a symbol in my peripheral vision, a crown-like sigil, and beneath it in plain text, "Diplomatic priority high." My stomach dropped. The kid saw my expression. "What?" I swallowed. "She's important. Like rich. Like if she dies here, our planet gets remembered for it." The kid went pale. "Oh." The security drone descended, projecting a holographic badge. "Citizen, step away." "Protocol requires—" "No," I said, voice low. "Protocol requires medical care. You're just afraid of paperwork." The drone paused, as if running a decision tree that hadn't been updated for someone with a spine. Then a new voice cut in closer from behind, human accented but polished. "Stand down, drone." A woman in a dark station uniform pushed through the crowd, not security, admin. The kind that carried authority with a tablet instead of a weapon. Two med techs followed, wheeling a compact stretcher, their faces tight with annoyance and something like fear. The admin's gaze flicked from me to the alien woman, and I watched her expression tighten when she saw the sigil my implant still displayed. Her own implant probably flashed the same. She crouched, careful, keeping her hands to herself. "Do you know who she is?" "No," I said honestly, "but my implant thinks she's a big deal." "That's an understatement," she murmured. One of the med techs raised a scanner and the device whined, then immediately shut itself off. "Encrypted biosignature," the tech muttered. "I can't read her vitals." The admin's jaw clenched. "Of course you can't." She looked at me again, and for the first time I saw the same question in her eyes that was in the crowd's. "Why did you stop?" I could have lied. I could have said duty, policy, training. Instead, I said the truth. Because she was on the floor. The admin stared at me for a long beat. Then she exhaled like the station had finally stopped holding its breath. "Okay," she said. "We're taking her to the sealed infirmary." "You coming?" I said. She blinked. "Excuse me." "She's afraid," I said, surprising myself with the certainty. When I touched her wound, she didn't flinch like it hurt. She flinched like she expected something else. "If your people rush her, she might panic." "I'm familiar now. That's not how this works. It is if you want her alive." The med techs exchanged glances. One opened his mouth to protest. The alien woman's hand twitched. Slowly she reached, not toward the med techs, not toward the admin, but toward me. Her fingers brushed my sleeve, weak as falling ash, a deliberate choice. The admin's posture shifted. Fine, she said tight, but you follow every instruction, and if you so much as sneeze on her, I'll hold my breath, I said. The kid stood too, clutching the burn spray like a trophy. Can I? Not you, the admin said automatically, then softened when she saw his face. You did good though, go, before your shift manager tries to sell your organs. He laughed again, shaky. Yes, ma'am. As the med techs lifted her onto the stretcher, her fingers tightened on my sleeve and I walked with them, feeling the weight of a moment that had already slipped out of my control. They rolled her through a side door marked staff only. The door sealed behind us, cutting off the fountain's cheerful noise and the crowd's curated indifference. The corridor smelled cleaner, colder, real medical air. In the sealed infirmary, the lights were dim and tinted faintly blue. The med techs transferred her to a bed that adjusted around her body as if trying to be gentle. A different kind of drone hovered here, sleek, clinical, not the ornamental kind. It scanned her with soft pulses of light. A wall display flickered with data I couldn't read. The admin tapped her tablet, lips moving silently as she read, and her face went from tense to alarmed to something like awe. She's Varen, she whispered. I didn't know what that meant, but the way she said it made my spine stiffen. The med tech frowned. Varen here, the Varen matriarchy doesn't send civilians, the admin replied. Not through public gates. One tech looked at me. What did you do? How did you even? I put a patch on her, I said, defensive. And a jacket under her head. That's it, the drone chirped a warning tone. One of the displays translated it into a blunt line of text. Neural shock risk high, consciousness fluctuating. Contact anchor present, contact anchor. The admin followed my gaze. It means she's tethering herself to you. Some species do it in crisis. A familiar presence reduces panic response. I'm not familiar, I said. You're the only one who didn't treat her like a hazard. My throat tightened. The alien woman's eyes opened again, and this time they were clearer, focused. She turned her head slightly toward me, and then impossibly my implant chimed like a lock turning. A voice filled my hearing, not from the room but from inside my own head, translated with uncanny smoothness. You stopped. I almost jumped out of my skin. Her mouth barely moved, but I heard her. Yeah, I said too quietly. I stopped. Her gaze held mine like gravity. Why? I could feel the admin and med techs listening, pretending not to. Because, I said, and the truth came out again, plain and unpolished, you were hurt. For a second, the pulsing veins in her skin brightened, like a star catching oxygen. On my world, she said, voice like cool metal, that answer is considered naive. On my world, I said, we call it basic. A sound, soft, rasping, escaped her. I realized with a strange jolt that it was laughter. The admin blinked hard, like she'd never heard that sound from that kind of person. The alien woman's gaze shifted briefly, taking in the room, the text, the drone. Calculation returned to her eyes, layered over pain. You are in charge here, she asked the admin. The admin's spine snapped straighter. Station Administrator Lisa Herrera, acting authority for Gate 9. The alien woman's eyelids lowered slightly. I require privacy. The admin hesitated, eyes flicking to the med techs. We need to monitor you. You will, the alien said. From outside the seal, I will not discuss state matters with strangers in the room. State matters, my stomach dropped again. The admin swallowed. As you wish. The med techs protested under their breath but obeyed. They stepped out. The admin lingered, staring at me. And him? She asked. The alien woman's gaze returned to my face. Him, she said, and for the first time there was something almost warm in her tone. Stays. The admin looked like she wanted to argue, then remembered what kind of incident this could become and left. The door sealed with a soft hiss. Suddenly it was just me, her, and the quiet humming of machines that didn't know how to measure what mattered. I stood awkwardly at the foot of her bed, hands flexing like I could shake off the station's tension. I'm not supposed to be here, I said. You are, she replied simply. I exhaled. Okay then, who are you? Her eyes held mine for a long, weighing moment. Then she said, if I tell you, you will become a target. Already feels like I'm in the middle of something, I muttered, a faint tilt of her lips. True, she shifted slightly, wincing. The bed's adaptive surface adjusted, cradling her broken arm. You may call me SAE, she said. That your name? It is the name I use when I am not allowed to be what I am, I frowned. And what are you? Her gaze sharpened again. A decision. That didn't help. She watched me struggle with it, then perhaps because pain makes even powerful people less patient, she sighed. I am the matriarch's voice, she said. The one who speaks for the one who rules. I am the edge of policy. My mouth went dry, a diplomat, an envoy, the kind of person whose death could start wars. Why are you here? I asked. Because the consortium believes humans are unpredictable, she said. Useful labor, dangerous neighbors, too emotional, too quick to bond, too quick to fight. I clenched my jaw. Sounds like a stereotype. It is a pattern, she corrected. Patterns can be true without being fair. I didn't like that. I didn't like that she sounded like she'd seen enough of us to say it calmly. She continued, voice steady. My people have considered opening the Veil routes. I blinked. The what? She hesitated, then decided I deserved clarity. Hidden corridors between systems, she said. Paths that shorten travel from months to days. They are old, dangerous. But controlled. My heart thudded. If that was real, it would change everything: trade, defense, colonization, power. And you're here because the consortium wants access, she said. They will ask, they will threaten, they will bribe, they will. Her eyes narrowed, and the veins in her skin brightened with anger. They will take what they can. I swallowed. And humans are not part of the consortium, she said. Not officially. Your worlds are adjacent, outside their treaty web, untethered. Kios, I said dryly. Her gaze softened a fraction. Also freer. I stared at her. You came through Gate 9 public open when you could have used private channels. Why? She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made the room feel colder. Because I needed to see what happens when no one is watching. I felt my stomach twist. You staged this? I asked, horrified. No, she interrupted, and the sharpness in her voice made my blood go cold. Do not insult me with that. She closed her eyes briefly, breathing through pain. I did not stage my injury, she said, quieter. There was an attempt on my life. The consortium has enemies. I have more. I escaped into the public concourse because I knew if I vanished into a private corridor, they would finish their work where cameras cannot prove anything. I swallowed. So you went where the cameras were? Yes, she said, and I waited. My anger deflated into something heavier. Everyone walked past you, I said, voice low. Yes. And you were judging them. I was observing, she corrected. Judgment comes later. My chest tightened. And me? Her eyes opened. The shimmer around her irises brightened like a blade catching light. You, she said, broke the pattern. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like an idiot who had stumbled into a trial I didn't know existed. Congratulations, I muttered. I guess my life's over. Her lips twitched again. Not over, redirected. A soft chime sounded from the wall console. Someone requesting entry. The alien woman SAE lifted her hand slightly, a gesture of permission. The door seal remained. She tilted her head, listening through whatever internal channels her biology and tech allowed. Then she looked at me. They are here, she said. Who? The ones who tried to kill me, she said. Or the ones who will pretend to save me, to control me. Often they are the same. My mouth went dry. Security can handle it. Her gaze was flat. Security is paid. I felt my pulse in my throat. What do you want me to do? I asked. Her answer came without hesitation. Help me stand. I stared. You can barely breathe. I can stand, she said, and her voice hardened with something ancient and iron. Pain is not the same as incapacity. I stepped forward instinctively, then hesitated, remembering her earlier flinch. You said touch. I allow it, she said, so I put my hands where she indicated, under her shoulder, around her back, careful of injuries. Her body was lighter than I expected, but tense as coiled wire. The pulsing veins flared brighter under my palms, responding to contact. She gritted her teeth, rose inch by inch, and when she was upright, she swayed. I tightened my hold. Her gaze locked on mine, and in that instant, I felt what she meant by anchor. Not magic, biology, psychology, whatever it was, but real. A desperate creature taking balance from the only thing that had offered it. The console chimed again, more insistent. The admin's voice filtered through the seal. Envoy, are you conscious? We have representatives from the consortium requesting immediate access. C's expression turned cold. Open the seal, she said, loud enough for the system to pick up, and do not allow them inside until I command it. The admin hesitated. Protocol is mine, SAE snapped. I am the protected party. I invoke emergency sovereignty. Silence. Then the seal released with a soft hiss. The door slid open. Station Administrator Herrera stood outside, rigid. Beside her were two men in tailored gray, consortium envoys by their smug posture alone, and three security officers whose hands rested too casually near their holsters. The envoys' eyes landed on SAE standing, supported by a human in a dockworker shirt, and something flickered across their faces. Surprise, annoyance, and a calculation. Honored voice, one envoy said smoothly, stepping forward. SAE lifted her chin. Even bleeding, even broken, she looked like someone who had never asked permission to exist. "You are late," she said. "We were informed of an incident," the other envoy said, tone rehearsed. "We are here to ensure your safety." C's eyes narrowed. "How generous." One of the security officers shifted closer, gaze darting to me like I was a stain. "You," the officer said, voice sharp. "Step away from the dignitary." C's grip on my sleeve tightened. "No," she said, and the word hit the corridor like a slammed door. The officer blinked. "Excuse me." C's gaze turned to him, and I felt the temperature drop another degree. "This human," she said, "is the only being in your entire concourse who recognized suffering as an emergency instead of an inconvenience." The envoy's smiles faltered. SAE continued, voice steady despite the tremor in her body. "He has provided aid. He has provided stability. He has provided." Her eyes flicked to the crowd gathering behind the admin, watching through the corridor's open sightline. "A demonstration." The first envoy recovered, forcing charm back into his face. "A demonstration of what?" C's gaze swept over them all, envoys, officers, admin, watchers. "Of civilization," she said simply. Silence thickened. The second envoy's eyes narrowed. "We appreciate the human's enthusiasm, but it is inappropriate for an unvetted laborer to remain in contact." C's eyes flashed. "Inappropriate," she echoed, and the word dripped with contempt. "You mean inconvenient, you mean uncontrolled." The envoy's jaw tightened. C's voice rose, not loud but carrying, designed to be heard, recorded, remembered. "I came through your gate bleeding," she said. "In full view of your cameras, I lay on your polished floor beneath your banners of unity, and your people walked around me as if compassion required a permit." The crowd behind the admin shifted, uncomfortable. SAE looked at the envoys. "Tell me, if your consortium cannot spare a hand for a dying stranger when the floor is clean and the lights are bright, what will you do when the veil roots open and the stakes are not symbolic?" The envoys didn't answer. C's gaze turned to the security officers. "And you," she said, voice like a blade. "You arrived only when a human raised his voice loud enough to disrupt commerce." One officer's face reddened. SAE looked at the admin. "Administrator Herrera." Herrera swallowed. "Yes," honored voice. C's grip tightened on my sleeve again, not to steady herself, but to make a point. "I request a public audit of your gate's emergency response protocols," SAE said, "and I request that this human be granted temporary diplomatic protection." Herrera's eyes widened. That is my request," SAE said, and the air around her seemed to thrum with authority. "You will comply?" Herrera nodded, breathless. "Yes, yes," honored voice. The first envoy tried again, voice smooth but strained. "We can discuss these matters privately. The consortium is prepared to offer," C's gaze snapped to him, "prepared to offer what? Money, access, threats wrapped in polite syllables." The envoy's smile cracked. SAE took a breath, and for a moment pain flickered across her face. I tightened my hold and she leaned into it just slightly. Then she delivered the twist like a verdict. "I did not come here to decide whether the consortium deserves the veil roots," she said. The corridor went still. "I came here," she continued, "to decide whether humans do." My heart slammed against my ribs. The envoys stared as if she'd spoken blasphemy. SAE lifted her chin. "Your species is young," she said, voice carrying beyond the corridor now into the concourse where more faces had gathered. "You have war in your history, anger, impulse." I felt every stereotype she'd mentioned earlier settle over us like dust. Then she looked down at me, and the hardness in her expression softened into something like respect. "And yet," she said, "when presented with a suffering stranger, one human chose to become responsible." Her gaze returned to the crowd. "That choice is rarer than strength, more valuable than wealth, more predictive than law." The first envoy stepped forward, voice sharp now. "This is unacceptable. The consortium will not." C's eyes flashed, and her veins pulsed brighter. "You will," she said, and the word carried the weight of an entire fleet behind it. The console on the wall chimed again, different tone, a deep official note. Herrera's tablet lit up with new alerts, her face draining of color as she read. "What is it?" I whispered, unable to stop myself. Herrera looked up, eyes wide. "A Varen crownship just dropped out of fold near the station." The corridor seemed to tilt. The envoys went pale. SAE exhaled, slow. "Good," she said softly. They heard. The security officers suddenly looked like men standing in front of a wave. One officer swallowed. We should escort the voice to safety." C's gaze cut to him. "Safety," she repeated. "Yes, from you." The officer flinched. Behind Herrera, the concourse screens flickered. The charity ads vanished. In their place, a single symbol appeared, the same crown-like sigil my implant had shown, a Varen broadcast. And beneath it, in the station's common language, a sentence that sent a ripple through the watching crowd: "We are observing." Sae closed her eyes briefly, letting the words hang like a blade over the gate. When she opened them again, she looked at me. "You are afraid," she said. "Yeah," I admitted. "A little." Her lips twitched faintly. "Good, fear means you understand the weight of consequence." I didn't like how calm she was. Then again, she'd probably lived with consequence the way I lived with gravity. A medtech peeked around the corner, face tight. "Envoy, your vitals are spiking, you need to lie down." Sae didn't move. "Later," she said. The envoys backed up a step as the station trembled, not physically but socially, like the entire place had realized it was being graded. C's gaze swept across them again. "I will be transported to my ship," she said, "under Varen guard, not consortium escort, not station security, Varen." Herrera nodded quickly. "Yes." C's eyes narrowed. "And the assailants," Herrera swallowed. "We will investigate." C's gaze turned icy. "You will do more than investigate, you will expose." Herrera nodded, sweating. "Yes." Sae shifted, pain flickering, and for the first time her body sagged. The moment of performance was costing her. I tightened my grip and she leaned into me more openly now, no longer pretending she didn't need help. Her voice dropped, "Only for me. You changed your gait today, human." I started. "You stopped," she interrupted. "Do not diminish it. You do not understand how many wars are born from what people refuse to see." I swallowed. "So what happens now?" C's gaze lifted to the screens, to the sigil, to the watching eyes. "Now," she said, "the galaxy learns that humans can be dangerous for reasons the consortium did not anticipate." My stomach tightened. "Dangerous how?" C's eyes met mine, and the shimmer around her irises brightened like dawn. "Because you bond," she said softly. "Because you choose, because once a human decides someone matters, you become very difficult to move." I felt the truth of that settle into my bones, not as pride but as recognition. I'd stopped because she was hurt, and now I was in the orbit of something that could rewrite maps. Herrera returned, voice urgent. "Varen guards are docking now, they're requesting." Sae lifted a hand. "One moment." She turned fully toward me. "I will ask you something," she said, "and you may refuse." My heart thudded. "Okay." C's gaze was steady, sharp, painfully honest. "When they offer you rewards, money, status, safety, will you accept them?" I frowned. "Depends." "Good," she said, as if that was the answer she wanted. "Then listen closely." Her voice became quieter, intimate, like she was speaking a secret into the space between us. "The consortium will try to make you a symbol," she said. "A story they can control. They will say, look, even humans can behave, and they will use you to wash their hands." My jaw tightened. "They will offer you a comfortable cage," she continued. "Do not take it." I swallowed. "What should I take?" C's lips curved faintly, and for the first time the expression looked like genuine amusement. "Take responsibility," she said. My throat tightened. "That's not exactly an easy thing to carry." C's gaze softened. "No," she agreed. "But humans are good at carrying what they should not have to." The door opened again, and this time the corridor filled with a different kind of presence. Varen guards moved like silence given shape, tall, armored faces hidden behind translucent masks that shimmered with faint light. They didn't look at the envoys, they didn't look at the crowd, they looked only at Sae. One stepped forward and knelt, head bowed. "Voice," the guard said, translated flawlessly. "We are here." C's posture straightened automatically, the pain masked behind trained authority. "You are late." The guard's head remained bowed. "We came as fast as Fold allowed." Sae nodded once. "Prepare transport." The guard rose and for the first time looked at me. I expected disdain or suspicion. Instead, the guard's voice, filtered, calm, said, "Human, you will come." My stomach lurched. "Me?" C's gaze met mine. "Yes," she said, "you are under my protection, and you have something the galaxy needs to see." The crowd in the concourse had pressed closer now, faces peering through the corridor opening, curiosity and guilt and fear mixing into one restless mass. The consortium envoys looked like they'd swallowed glass. I wanted to back away. I wanted to say no. I wanted to go back to my cargo straps and my small, manageable life. But my hands were still on C's back, and she was still bleeding, still broken, still standing. I remembered her on the floor under the Sunsilk advertisement and the way the galaxy had flowed around her like she wasn't real. I couldn't unsee it, so I nodded. "Okay," I said, "I'll come." C's gaze held mine, and in it I saw something that wasn't gratitude exactly. It was relief. As the Varen guards moved in to lift her with practiced gentleness, C's fingers brushed my sleeve one last time, an echo of the moment she chose me. Then she was carried forward and I walked beside her into a corridor that led not to Gate 9's bright banners but to a docking tube where the air smelled like cold metal and distant storms. Behind us, the station's screens still displayed the crown sigil. We are observing. Ahead of us, through a viewport, the Varen crownship hung in space like a dark star, lights blooming along its hull in patterns that felt older than politics. The galaxy had been watching who walked past, and today, for reasons I still couldn't fully explain, I had stopped. That was all. That was everything. Because sometimes the thing that changes history isn't a weapon. Sometimes it's a hand that reaches down when everyone else keeps walking. And sometimes the universe notices.